Welcome to Realizations, Decisions, and Actions. This is a webinar on spotting music for film for composers. I'm Andrew Bellware. This is going to be a multi-part webinar. Part one, which is what this is, we're going to go over the outlines and goals. I'm going to briefly mention copyright issues, so I don't want this to get dinged on YouTube or anything, so the only movie that we're going to use in this is going to be one that I own all the rights to, and that's just how this one's going to work. We're going to talk about music's effect on drama, and the definition of spotting, and typical processes of spotting. In parts 2 and 3, we're going to be looking at narrative analysis and dramatic analysis. We're going to really be getting into the specifics of spotting. So I'm going to start with I'm just going to start with a sort of an unsubstantiated fact, but I think that we can all agree that it's true. Music dictates the drama. The music reinforces the meaning, or if it's operating against the meaning of the overall drama, it can either destroy or create a brand new and actually good drama where there wasn't one before. So the placement of music is also an extremely important part of how the music helps or, potentially hinders the drama. The placement doesn't mean just the in and the out points, though, and it's kind of important to recognize that when we're spotting, we're not necessarily talking about just in and out points, but anything that the music might do that reinforces the drama or underlines particular moments. Now, to find those places, we can use narratology and dramatic theory. Music spotting has never been terribly intuitive to me. I've had to do it a lot. I've never found it to be super duper easy. So that's why I went into this whole project of trying to discover these things. This framework works for me. If it doesn't work for you, or if you're just magically great at spotting movies and never need any help, maybe this isn't for you, but maybe parts of this are for you. And maybe parts of it just help you talk about specifics in the drama with other members of the production team. So if parts of this work for you and other parts don't, hey, we're making art here. There's no rules that we have to obey. It's art. So take whatever works for you. And also, with dramatic theory and narrative theory, don't take my definitions as being canonical. Now, we're going to get into this, but neither one of these things is terribly well defined. Like, there's not a lot of really hard definitions of these things out there. My definitions are super duper not canonical. So why don't we just go straight into this? And we're going to look at a scene from a film. The scene has no music. It does have a fairly advanced dialogue and sound effects edit. More advanced than you'd probably be seeing as a composer. They probably just started to lock picture about the time the composer sees it. Sometimes it's actually locked, but in this particular case, it is locked picture. There is most of a sound and dialogue edit, but I'm not going to tell you anything about the movie or about the scene. We're just going to watch it, and then we're going to watch it a bunch more times, because watching a scene over and over again is what you do when you compose music for films. So let's just take a look at this scene without knowing anything.
Hey.
Who is that?
It's my mother.
You miss her.
Yeah.
Grief.
I think so. I didn't really know her. My dad and the captain told me a lot about her, though.
What happened?
Well, after the ship crashed here on this planet.
Do you remember that?
I mean, I was too little. What about your mom? Oh God, that was stupid. You're an android. Sorry, I just forget sometimes. It's just...
I am very lucky.
Why? That you don't have any family?
No. To know I am an android.
How would you not know that?
After a reset, it takes a while to understand things.
Like time?
Like time. And where you are. And how long you've been there.
I feel like that all of the time.
You and I have much in common.
Which is really funny with you being a combat android and all. Well, it doesn't matter. You're one of us now.
When they die, I will grieve with you.
All right, so now we've taken a look at this scene. We don't really know very much about the relationship of these characters to one another. We can look at why this is a problem. We can look at how this affects how we spot a film. So let's back up a little bit, keeping that bit of movie in mind, and let's look at some definitions. Spotting refers to where the music goes and what it will sound like. All right, that's actually, it's a pretty good definition from the Complete Guide to Film Scoring, which if you do music composition for film, you've probably read. And that's a decent enough definition. Doesn't really tell us how to do it. And that's when we get to film composing textbooks. Now, I've just pulled out a couple examples from these two books that are fairly well-known, but they're both pretty darn good books, except when it comes to what they have to say about spotting. Jeff Rona, I found very frustrating. Starting a cue at an awkward moment is a common mistake made by less experienced composers. I mean, okay, great, but how do you get what, how, give me something more. And unfortunately, he doesn't. He does talk a lot about a lot of other details about scoring, but that's all you're really going to get as far as spotting. Charles Bernstein said, "There's no rule book or checklist that tells composers how to spot music for films. Knowing how to place music strategically throughout a film is a special skill and an art. It is very much part of what makes some composers excel as musical dramatists." Well, again, this isn't super duper helpful. And so what I'm proposing here is that we get some kind of structure or framework that might help knowing where to place music strategically throughout a film. So the typical process composing music for film is that you spot the movie and then you compose the movie. So you might sit down and watch the whole movie with the director, for instance, and make timecode notes or put markers in a timeline and then go off and compose the music. That's not really what happens. It's much more complicated than that and much more iterative. The movie may have in fact been pre-spotted before you get to it. There may be temp tracks in there where the picture editor has come up with a whole bunch of places that the drama needs emphasis. And a lot of people complain about temp tracks. I don't. There's a lot of good reasons for having them. If you do edit picture, it's extraordinarily difficult to edit picture without any music. So it can be very, very helpful. But it is an iterative process. So you are going to keep going back and forth over it. In this webinar, we're focusing on where sound cues can go. And we need to have two kinds of understandings in order to make the sort of analysis that we need to do to discover where sound cues can go. That's narrative understanding and a dramatic understanding. In narrative understanding, we'll be looking at perspectives and changes in perspective, and also additional narrative level changes. Under dramatic understanding, we'll be looking at realizations, decisions, and actions. Narrative understanding will be in part 2 of this webinar. Dramatic understanding will be in part 3. So you're basically making two decisions all the time when you're spotting a film. You're thinking about what kind of music you're going to make and where you're going to put it. And again, not to overemphasize this point, but where you put it is not necessarily just the ins and the outs, but like where you add the strings to underscore some drama. Either way you go with that, those are the two kinds of decisions. There's going to be a textural and a temporal decision. So our goal here is going to be to look at how narratology is going to help us understand this scene better and enable us to compose some music for it. So where are we now? We've outlined the goals of the webinar and copyright issues. We've talked briefly about music's effect on drama and the definition of spotting, typical processes of spotting. And next up, we're going to be looking at narrative analysis in part 2 and then dramatic analysis in part 3 to actually come up with some ways to spot a scene. Coming up next, we're going to be looking in part 2 at narrative theory.